On ultra-processed foods and getting into that here, you were born into a privileged background, obviously not something you can control, but I wonder what you would say to maybe a single mom of 2 kids who's reading this report about how harmful these cheap but very accessible foods are for her family and saying, well, you know, sometimes that's the best we can do, and that's why that's what's on the food or at the table at the end of the day, or that's what's in their lunchbox.
It's an illusion to think that processed food is cheap, because you end up paying for it with diabetes. You end up paying for it with autoimmune dysregulation, with mitochondrial dysfunction, with inflammation, and you end up paying much higher costs in the long run.
But they're not paying.
Now, there are food deserts in this country,
yeah,
where people at this point have a hard time getting access. I met with the health technology companies this week, and it was an extraordinary meeting, and one of the statements they made is that there's no place in this country, in the lower 48, where you can't get access to good foods. It's not easy access, as it had been in the past, and that's been part of the economic drivers, and also the fact that people don't understand that these processed foods are poison.
but
They're more and more, and you're watching companies now that are changing their ingredients because of this movement, that are making good food more available to Americans because they're demanding it. There was no demand for it before. This report is about getting every American to demand the accessibility to good whole food in their neighborhoods. And that, you know, it's going to be a process, but it's already happening. You see these big fast food conglomerates that are switching from seed oils to beef tallow fat. You see them reducing the ingredients. You see Chobani yogurt changing its ingredients because of the demand that has happened because of the MAHA movement. We are going to make sure they have apps that mothers who go into the grocery store have an app that they can send a flash on the barcode of every product and get a green light, red light, or yellow light. That will allow them
HHS is creating that?
We're working with industry to do it, and they're already doing it. You know, Mark Hyman's company has done it. Patrick Sonsingh's company has done it. There are many, many apps out there that I use one called Yucca. That is my wife and I consider it invaluable. You can go into any grocery store, flash it at any product, and you can get a go or a no on it. And as that happens, the market, we're not trying to create an anti-state here. We're trying to drive market forces that will drive change in the kind of food Americans get. Through good information and good science.
In anticipation of this report, there was a lot of pushback from farmers, agricultural groups. I know you heard from some Republican senators up on Capitol Hill who were worried about what it would mean for pesticides, ones that have been approved already by the EPA. I want to get your response to what one Illinois farmer, who is also the National Corn Growers Association president, Kenneth Hartman Jr., he told the Wall Street Journal, if the administration's goal is to bring more efficiency to government, then why is the MAHA Commission duplicating efforts by raising questions about pesticides that have been answered repeatedly through research and reviews by the EPA?
There's nothing in this report that will worry the American farmer. The person who made that statement had never seen the report.
Atera is the IT painkiller. Remote monitoring and management, remote access, help desk and ticketing.
So
you won't reverse anything the EPA has approved?
Listen, we consider, and I said this during the 2.5 years that I was running for president, farmers in this country are in trouble. You know, and I met with farmers in Texas and the Midwest this week, and they consistently told me 7 out of every 10 years we are losing money. If we lose the farmers, the MAHA agenda is bankrupt. We need the farmers as partners. We need to keep them in business. We don't want to put a single farmer out of business. What we want to do is create incentives and innovation to allow them to innovate themselves, to use less chemical intensive, but we're not an anti-state. We're not going to coerce people. We're not going to tell them what to do. We're going to give them the opportunity. And we found in the farm community that the majority of farmers, they are the original environmentalists. They want to produce healthy food, and we need to give them the ability to do that and the economic incentives and the technology. We already have healthy food. We need to produce the best food that we can possibly, and continue to do that.
You mentioned your presidential run, and some farmers may look at that and be skeptical of what you're saying, because you made comments like saying that you could weaponize the other agencies against chemical agriculture by doing good science on the chemicals that you say are poisoning us, high fructose corn syrup, and it's linked to the obesity epidemic. So if they're worried you're going to weaponize other agencies against them.
And that's, processed food. And I think we've all agreed that processed food is not a good thing for human health, and that we're driving a diabetes epidemic. Caitlin, when I was a kid, my uncle was president. The average pediatrician at that time saw one case of juvenile diabetes in his lifetime over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 38% of teens are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door has that, and it's costing us $1 trillion a year just for that kind of mitochondrial dysfunction. It's bankrupting our country. It's making it 75% of American kids can't qualify for military service.
Let me ask you about something you said when you were on Capitol Hill this week. You were asked about the lead crisis in Milwaukee schools. You told Congress, quote, "We have a team on the ground in Milwaukee." The city said that's not true and that they are still not getting the help that they want from the CDC. Do you know who is on the ground? Who were you under the impression
The CDC is
was
giving them assistance with their labs, their analytics, and advice.
They just said one technician was on the ground.
I can't tell you how many are on the ground in the city of Milwaukee, but I can tell you we are there.
But you don't know how many?
I can't tell you how many right now.
So, this is from the Milwaukee Health Commissioner and Senator Tammy Baldwin. Yeah.
You could read my other exchanges with Tammy Baldwin, and anyway, I'm not necessarily believing what Senator Baldwin
So you're
is.
disputing and saying that there are more than one CDC employees on the ground.
Like I said, we have 62,000 employees. I'm not sure how many we have deployed to Milwaukee. I'm happy to check and give you that information.
And are you committed to helping with the schools there? Because obviously they're having a real issue with this, and say it's really affecting the students.
Of course, I've been working on lead in the schools including in Milwaukee, for 40 years. It is a crisis in our country. 44% of black youth in our municipalities have dangerous levels of lead in their blood. And that is crippling them for a lifetime, potentially. So it's an issue that is foremost on my mind. It's a high priority, and it's something we'll continue to be involved with.
Okay, and we're talking about the big release of this report today. The next report that you've said that you'll produce is in September, when you want to determine the cause of autism. Do you still plan to know the cause of the autism?
The dietary guidelines come out in August, and the second stage of this report also comes out in August.
Okay, so that's in August. But this would be in September, when you said that you would be able to determine what the cause of autism is. Is that still the timeline that you are sticking with?
We will have some studies completed by September. And those studies will mainly be replication studies of studies that have already been done. We're also deploying new teams of scientists, 15 groups of scientists. We're going to send those grants out to bid within 3 weeks.
Why would you replicate studies that have been done?
Because the only way you can get good science is through replication. If you don't have replication, you don't know whether other scientists looking at the same data will arrive at the same conclusion. Good science always includes replication. In fact, we're changing the procedures at NIH so that up to 20% of the funding at NIH is for replication. If you don't have replication, you have incentives to cheat. And there's a lot of cheating that goes on in science.
Okay, but some people might dispute that, but looking at your April 10th comments when you were inside the cabinet meeting, you said by September we will know what has caused the autism epidemic and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
We'll have some of the information. To get the most solid information, it will probably take us another 6 months.
Okay, so parents should not expect to know what causes autism by September anymore.
We'll see. We're going to, as I said, we're going to replicate some of the studies that have already been done that look like sound studies, and we'll know a lot from those, and then we'll know a lot more afterward.
But not the definitive answer by September, just to be clear, because it matters.
It depends what those replicable studies show.
Okay, and then what do you expect to happen 6 months after that? You mentioned something
I
else
expect
in 6
we will
months.
know the answers of the etiology of autism.
Okay, so that timeline is moving from September to 6 months
As
after
I said,
September.
we're going to begin to have a lot of information by September. We're not going to stop the studies in September. We're going to be definitive, and the more definitive you are, the more it drives public policy.
Okay, so that would put us at what, March next year? You say you'll know the cause of it?
As I said, it's about 6 months after September. A lot of these studies will begin coming back.
You also said something recently when you were on Capitol Hill and you were being asked about vaccines and whether or not you would recommend them for people out in the United States. And you said that people should not take medical advice from you. You are the HHS Secretary, though, and your job is to create guidance and to talk about vaccines and medical testing. Why should people not take medical advice from you?
Well, they probably shouldn't take medical advice from any HHS secretary. Very few of the HHS secretaries historically, I think maybe 10 or 20%, 15% have been doctors. People were asking me, I was responding to a question about my personal health choices. And I said, that's not relevant because people should not make their decisions based upon my personal health choices. We have an infrastructure. We have an advisory committee on immunization practices that makes recommendations. It's a group of scientists that looks at reams of data, and that's where our recommendations come from, not from an individual.
But you're leading
It's
all
time,
of those agencies.
one of the big mistakes that you and many other of your media colleagues made during COVID is to try to convince the American people that they should trust the experts. Trusting the experts is not a feature of science. It's not a feature of democracy. It's a feature of religion and totalitarianism. What we should do is trust the science. And we are going to do the science, and the science is going to be replicable, and it's going to be gold standard so that parents can make their own choices about what is best for their family and their health.
But I think people, the message was to trust the science and what studies were finding and what
during
people were
COVID,
seeing.
that was a bad message. It was trust the experts. That's what you kept telling us. Trust the experts.
I don't know that I ever said that.
Well,
I mean, we talked to the officials. Actually,
your
during
network was
COVID,
saying it every day.
we took the briefings live every day with all of the experts that President Trump. Those are President Trump's doctors. But those are the people President Trump brought out to the briefings.
Well, President Trump brought, and I can.
He
if
brought
you
Dr.
want to go
Fauci
chapter
and
and
Dr.
verse, I
Birx.
can tell you what President Trump did right and what President Biden did wrong. What I'm saying to you.
But I want to get back to what your comment was about that. You said that people should not take your medical advice.
Yeah,
That's your position?
Yeah, absolutely. People should not be taking medical advice. I'm somebody who is not a physician, but they should also be skeptical about any medical advice. They need to do their own research. You're a mom. If you're a mom, you do your own research on your baby carriage, on your baby bottles, on your baby formula.
But they don't have medical degrees, obviously. If you're a mom and you're looking at what science has been tested, they trust their doctors and their pediatricians.
One of the responsibilities of living in a democracy where physicians and every sort of expert are subject to all kinds of biases. One of the responsibilities of living in a democracy is to do your own research and to make up your own mind.
So that's your message to moms or to anyone, is to do your own research.
I would say be skeptical of authority. My father told me that when I was a young kid. People in authority lie. And we've seen a lot of that in our country. And people in the media lie. And people need to make their own judgments and be skeptical and maintain their capacity for critical thinking. And that was shut down during COVID. And the media was complicit.
Disagree on that last.
Say at the motherland, we represent for the motherland. Florence, represent the motherland.